destruction of the human race.
They hate us with every fiber of their existence.
And now their evil plans may become reality.
It's dangerous around here.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars, welcome to another classic film review. Today's classic film review is a 1978 movie, Battlestar Galactica, a film that stars Lon Green, Richard Hatch and Dirk Benedict. Now, the reason why I kind of hesitated really, because this was kind of a TV movie. I do think it got like a limited cinema release. I don't think it ever got a cinema release in the UK. I don't ever remember going to the cinema to see it, but I could have been mistaken. But Battlestar Galactica for me is one of the definitive science fiction shows of all time. It's a show I grew up on now. At the time when this was released, sci-fi was huge, obviously because of Star Wars, so everybody wanted in on the action, which is how Battlestar Galactica essentially got greenlit. But in actual fact, it comes from a much older story. I think was it Glenn A. Larson who created it, had a story in the 60s called Adam's Ark or something like that, that had the bones of the Battlestar Galactica story to it. So George Lucas, who actually tried to sue the makers of Battlestar Galactica because they thought it was basically ripping off Star Wars, well, in actual fact, it was an older story just kind of re-changed and formed for the movie that they actually put out. Now, most of you will know that this, like I say, it was like essentially a pilot episode that was extended into a movie that turned into a TV show. And unfortunately, while the TV show only ran for one season, it was incredibly popular, and part of the reason why it only ran for one season, there's all sorts of different reasons out there. It was too expensive. There was all sorts of lawsuits going on, like I say, with George Lucas, but there was also a lawsuit in regards to some of the merchandise that had gone out. There was some kind of, was it one of the Vipers or something with like these little missiles in that a child choked on at the time. So there are all sorts of negativity in the press around the show. So that's partly what went towards it kind of not getting renewed for a second season. It famously did come back for Battlestar Galactica 1980 sort of thing, which was abysmal. There was only one good episode in that. That was the one with Starbuck, the very last one, I think. The rest of it is not even worth mentioning. It's really, really poor. But Battlestar Galactica then, what do we get with this? If you've never watched this before, what is it about? Well, it focuses on the 12 colonies, these human colonies, far out into space. We have been at war with the Cylons for an awful long time. I think they say like 1,000 years, something like that. And we are told that the Cylons want peace. And even though I do take issue with the fact that how easily we accept this, seeing that we've been at war with them for 1,000 years, we get lulled into a false sense of security, and then they strike and basically destroy all the colonies. And then it ends up with the only Battlestar remaining is the Battlestar Galactica and a ragtag group of humans in whatever ships they could find. And there's like a convoy of ships out into space, and they head out then looking for Earth. Right. So Battlestar Galactica. Then why did I enjoy this? Well, you got to imagine when I first saw this when it came out. I was born in 1972. So when I first had eyes on this, I would have been like between the ages of like 6 and 8, sort of thing. It was just magical. The music, everything was just bang on. The designs of the Vipers, the designs of the Battlestars, but forget all that, the designs of the Cylons, I remember them being absolutely terrifying to me as a kid. Far scarier than Stormtroopers. I thought the design of the Cylons was absolutely brilliant. And that's probably part of the reason why I enjoyed Knight Rider so much, the TV show, because they use the design of the Cylon eye on the Knight Rider car. And in actual fact, the sound that the Vipers make when they are shot out of the Galactica is the same noise that they used on Knight Rider whenever he pressed turbo boost, I think it was. So the Knight Rider stole quite a lot from Battlestar Galactica as it happens. But I just thought the designs were so good in this show, and the idea, it was so good. Obviously, it was recreated for the 2003 miniseries and 2004 series Battlestar Galactica when it was rebooted, and that is for me superior in every way to this 70s show. I just think it's one of the greatest science fiction shows of all time, the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, and I have covered that on the channel fairly recently. I have reviewed the miniseries. But I think I love this Battlestar Galactica movie, firstly, rather than the TV show, because it's just so... It reminds me so much of my childhood, and it's got this really ageless story of good versus evil that's done really, really well. I also quite like the fact that it's quite jarring when you watch it now as an adult, but the fact that the pilot, or the movie, which is what I'm talking about here, it's got the first part of it, you know, when they're the Cylons, you know, destroy all the colonies, and they've got to get everyone together and like make their way across space to escape the Cylons. And then they get to that planet where they're lured into this false sense of security, where they think they're on this luxury planet being pampered by these creatures. You know, you can't lose in the casinos and all this kind of stuff. And it's another plot and a ply by the Cylons to basically take out the rest of humanity. And even though when you watch it, you kind of like, come on guys, this is so obviously a trap, and the only one that can see it is a Dharma. It does make you laugh a little bit that the new people they put in charge, you know, of the 12 colonies are all imbeciles, and the only person that isn't, obviously, is a Dharma. So there are aspects of it that you just find a little bit silly in it still, but it is still really watchable, and it is still really, really fun to watch. I rewatched it to prep for this review, and I had an absolute ball with it. Yes, there are moments in it that are very 70s. Muffet 2, you know, the robotic Daggett is abysmal, and the fact, and especially when you realise it was a chimp in real life that they put in it. It just does not work at all. But I thought, and I still think it's great. The chemistry between Apollo and Starbuck is just brilliant. And I mentioned it on my other review for Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. You know, when they recast Starbuck as a woman, I, like many, was outraged. How dare you? But I think it's just because Dirk Benedict's performance as Starbuck is so good. He's got so much charisma, very Han Solo-like. You couldn't imagine anybody else playing him, but it's testament to Katie Sackhoff how well she actually did to reimagine Starbuck, and now I don't care. In actual fact, I think her performance as Starbuck is better. And Richard Hatch as Apollo is very, very good, and he obviously makes his return in the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, not as Apollo later on, as a different character. But it's just, for me, it's a TV show that has stood the test of time. It still feels really watchable, and obviously there's still an awful lot of a fan base and an audience out there that really still enjoys watching it, and he can connect to the story because it's been rebooted once successfully. They've been talking about doing it again. Would I be interested in it? I would watch it. I'm just not sure it's required. What are they actually going to bring to the party that the original did, or the rebooted thing? You know, how are they going to differ from that? You know, I'm not really sure how that's going to work, if I'm honest, but I'll certainly try it again if they do bring it back, whether it's a movie, whether it's a rebooted show. I will definitely give it a go, because I just think Battlestar Galactica as a franchise is just really, really good. And a lot of fun to watch, and it is a different type of science fiction story. It's not just a clone copy of Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that. It has its own story. It has its own like feel, and for me, it's just really, really good. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this revisit of the original Battlestar Galactica. Don't forget, I have recently reviewed the miniseries on the channel as well. I'll put a link at the end of this review for you to check it out if you haven't seen it. And of course, I'll be back for plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.